31 floors above the city, barefoot and broken, Maya Caldwell stood on the rooftop ledge of the very company where she fought daily to survive. A single mother abandoned by love, disowned by blood, and crushed by debt, she was ready to end it all, until a hand pulled her back. The hand of the CEO. He didn't know her name. She didn't know his intentions. But that moment rewrote both of their lives. The wind howled as if it could sense the weight of her thoughts. On the rooftop of Coleman Industries, 31 floors above the ground, Maya Caldwell stood motionless at the edge. Her heels had long been kicked off, and her bare feet tingled against the cold, rough concrete. The city's heartbeat pulsed below, cars honking, sirens in the distance, life moving on without her. She was invisible down there. Up here, she could finally be seen, even if only in death. The dusk was creeping in, staining the sky a soft, bruised purple. The clouds hung heavy, echoing the heaviness in her chest. Her hands gripped the rusted railing tightly, knuckles white. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she no longer cared to wipe them away. Why bother? No one had looked her in the eye for weeks. Not at work. Not at the daycare where she left her baby every morning. Not even in the mirror. She was too tired to be angry. Too tired to be strong. She had fought for so long, through betrayal, rejection, humiliation, and heartbreak. And now there was nothing left to fight with. Her lips parted, trembling. "You bastard," she whispered, voice cracking. "You left us with nothing." Her mind drifted back to Jordan, the man she once gave up her whole life for. The charming, idealistic dreamer who had convinced her to run away from her golden cage. Her father's wealth. His rules. His conditions. She gave it all up to live freely with Jordan in a cramped apartment, working part-time jobs and learning to stretch every penny. And for a while she was happy. Until the baby came. Until Jordan changed. Until one day he was just gone, taking with him everything. Her savings, her stability, and her dreams. She went back to her father, broken, holding her newborn son. But Richard Caldwell, proud billionaire tycoon, didn't open the gates. "You made your choice," he had said coldly. "Now live with it." So she did. She found work at the very bottom of the ladder, a junior admin assistant at Coleman Industries, and she gave it her all. Every morning, she kissed her son goodbye, and every evening she picked him up late from daycare, apologizing to the tired workers and dodging overdue bills. But today was different. Today had broken her. She had received notice that her rent was being raised. The daycare called to say she was late with payment again. Her supervisor yelled at her for misfiling a report. And when she tried to eat lunch, she realized she'd left her wallet at home. She hadn't even had a cup of coffee all day. And when the receptionist asked her to stay late and organize documents she hadn't even worked on, something inside her snapped. She'd climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Each step felt like another goodbye. Now here she was. "I'm sorry, Noah," she whispered, the name of her baby catching in her throat. "I hope someone kind finds you. I hope you're better off without me." She took one deep breath, bracing herself, and closed her eyes. Then a hand shot out and seized her wrist. "Maya." The voice was urgent, male, and familiar, but she couldn't place it at first. She stumbled backward, yanked off balance by the sheer force of the grip. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from fear but confusion. Her eyes flew open, and she looked up into a face she had only seen from a distance or in employee memos and magazine covers. Elias Coleman, the CEO. Tall, dark-haired, with stormy eyes and a face too calm for someone who had just stopped a suicide. He looked down at her, breathing heavily, still holding onto her wrist as if letting go might break her again. "What?" Her voice trembled. "I followed you," he said, releasing her hand gently but not stepping away. "I saw you in the elevator cameras. You looked lost." She blinked at him, stunned. Her knees buckled, and she sank down against the ledge, hugging her arms tightly around herself. He didn't move. He crouched beside her instead, giving her space, but not silence. "Don't jump," he said quietly. The words were simple, direct, not pitying. She let out a choked laugh, bitter and raw. "Why not? I'm nothing. I'm a single mom nobody wants. My father threw me away. The man I loved stole from me. And I can't even afford to feed my son properly. He was silent for a long moment, and she thought maybe he'd walk away. But then Elias said something that made her look up. You're not nothing. I saw the way you work. How you never miss a day. How you skip lunch to make phone calls to your kids' daycare. I don't know everything you've been through, Maya, but I know someone who works that hard isn't worthless. Her lip quivered. You don't know me. Then tell me. Start now. Let me listen. And for the first time in months, maybe years, someone did. They sat there for a while, on the cold rooftop floor, between the hum of rooftop machinery and the sounds of the living world below. Maya stared ahead, eyes glassy and unblinking. Her voice felt stuck in her throat, tangled by years of pain and humiliation. Elias didn't speak again. He just waited. Eventually, the words began to trickle out, fragile as glass. My name is Maya Caldwell, she began, almost like a confession. Yes, Caldwell. That Caldwell. My father is Richard Caldwell, the billionaire, the one who owns that hotel chain and 3 private golf courses. She glanced sideways, expecting disbelief, maybe even judgment. But Elias simply nodded, letting her speak on her own terms. I was his princess once, she continued, her lips curving into a crooked, humorless smile. I had everything, chauffeurs, prep school, horses, designer bags before I was old enough to spell Chanel. But I hated it. I hated how cold everything felt, how love came with strings. She swallowed, as if forcing down years of regret. Then I met Jordan. He was reckless, funny, free, everything my life wasn't. He told me he'd take me away, and I let him. A pause. The wind tugged at her hair, but she didn't flinch. I thought I was being brave, choosing love over wealth. My father warned me, but I thought he was just controlling me again. I left without a dime. Thought we'd figure it out together. Her voice faltered. For a while we did. Rented a shoebox apartment. Shared dollar meals. Laughed at how broke we were. Then her voice hardened. Until I got pregnant. Elias's expression shifted subtly, barely a flicker, but Maya saw it. Not disgust. Not pity. Just awareness. Understanding. He changed. Jordan couldn't handle it. He started disappearing for days. Then weeks. Until one day he just left. Took my savings. Left me a note and vanished. I was 6 months pregnant. She let the words hang there, like knives suspended in the air. I had nowhere to go. I went back to my father. Showed up at the gates like some broken fairy tale. Holding my belly like a fool. And he looked at me like I was dirt. Said I made my bed. Said I chose love over family and slammed the door. Her throat tightened. Her hands clenched. I slept at a women's shelter for the last few months of my pregnancy. After Noah was born, I worked night shifts. Waitressing. Cleaning. Anything. Eventually, I got this job. It was supposed to be a miracle. A fresh start. A corporate job with benefits. But it's barely enough. She turned to him then, eyes brimming with bitter vulnerability. Do you know what it's like to feed your baby powdered milk because you can't afford formula? To drop him at daycare and pray they won't send him home because you haven't paid? To show up to work with a smile even though you're breaking inside, because you need that paycheck to keep the lights on. Elias didn't answer. He didn't look away either. Maya wiped her face angrily, ashamed of her tears. You probably think I'm weak. That I should have tried harder. That I'm pathetic for coming up here ready to jump. He finally spoke, voice low. No, I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. She stared at him. You didn't jump, he said simply. Even after everything, you didn't jump. That tells me something. Maya scoffed. I was about to. But you didn't. Silence stretched between them again. This time, it didn't feel so empty. I don't want your pity, she said quietly. You're not getting it, Elias replied. I came up here because I saw someone on the cameras who looked like they were carrying the weight of the world. And I knew that look because I've worn it too. That surprised her. Elias Coleman, billionaire heir and CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, looking broken? Before she could ask, he rose and extended his hand. Come down with me. Just talk. That's all. You don't owe me anything. She looked at his hand for a long moment. And then, for the first time in months, she reached out and let someone help her to her feet. As they stepped into the stairwell together, leaving the rooftop behind, something shifted. A fracture in the darkness. A crack wide enough for a little light to slip through. Elias Coleman was a man who lived by data, precision, and results. His decisions were calculated, his leadership crisp, and his time tightly managed by assistants who knew he despised emotional clutter. So when he found himself distracted by a junior admin assistant's pain, by Maya Caldwell's story, it unnerved him. Back in his office the next morning, he stared blankly at the quarterly sales report glowing on his screen. It was full of numbers that usually excited him. This time they felt meaningless. You didn't jump. He kept hearing her voice from last night, playing over and over. The mixture of defiance and despair in her words, it clung to him. He shouldn't be involved. That's what his instincts told him. But the image of Maya on that rooftop, barefoot, broken, and yet still breathing, had lodged itself somewhere deeper than he liked to admit. He sighed, then opened her personnel file. Maya Caldwell, age 29, junior admin, hired 11 months ago. No incidents. Excellent punctuality. Frequently works overtime. A glowing record for someone in a low-level position with limited prospects. Too good for where she is, he murmured. A knock at his office door broke the silence. His assistant, Kendra, poked her head in. You asked for the internal audit on department staffing? Yes. Leave it. As she placed the file on his desk, she hesitated. You okay, sir? You look tired. He gave her a half-smile. Just thinking. Once she left, Elias leaned back in his chair, staring out over the skyline of the city. It was the same view from the rooftop. But from here, it looked safe, secure, powerful. He wondered what it must feel like to look at that view and feel like the world below has no room for you. Meanwhile, Maya returned to work the next day with a cloud of shame trailing behind her. She wore oversized sunglasses, not to look chic, but to hide the puffiness around her eyes. Her body moved on autopilot, answering emails, printing reports, delivering documents, mechanical, cold, quiet. Her co-workers didn't ask what was wrong, but a few looked at her differently. Had someone seen her? Had they noticed her go to the roof? Or worse, had someone heard? She avoided eye contact, especially with management. She wasn't ready to see Elias again. But he found her. That afternoon, just before she clocked out, she received a short internal message. Subject, office transfer. Maya, effective tomorrow, you'll be reporting directly to the CEO's office as a personal assistant. Please arrive by 8 a.m. Executive Admin Office. Her hand froze over her mouse. She reread it. Twice. A third time. It had to be a mistake. There were at least 10 more qualified assistants. What did she do to earn a transfer to Elias Coleman's personal office? Her phone buzzed. A message from daycare. Noah's running a low-grade fever. Please pick up by 5:30. Reality snapped back in. No time to overthink. She grabbed her coat, gathered her bag, and rushed out. But as she rode the elevator down, her stomach churned. Was this a reward? A test? A silent act of pity? The next morning, when she entered the sleek, minimalist CEO suite, she felt like an imposter in a high-fashion magazine. The walls were a sharp contrast of white and navy, decorated with abstract art and framed patents. The air smelled like expensive coffee and silence. Elias was already inside. He stood at the massive glass window, suit immaculate, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn when she entered. Good morning, Maya. Sir. I got the notice, but I wasn't sure if. It's not a mistake, he said, finally facing her. His tone was even. I want you here. She blinked. Why? Because I trust you, he said simply. And because I think you deserve more than you've been given. Maya's throat tightened. He gestured toward a small desk near the door. You'll manage my calendar, filter urgent emails, and sit in on certain meetings. Nothing overwhelming. Your pay has been adjusted, and your hours will now allow you to pick up Noah on time." She stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" Elias didn't answer right away. He approached his desk, tapped his tablet, and handed it to her. "I reviewed the work you've done over the past year. You've been handling projects above your pay grade. You've corrected your supervisor's mistakes. You've stayed late. And you've done all that while raising a child alone." He looked her in the eyes. "You don't need charity. You need opportunity. I can give you that. But only if you're ready." Maya hesitated. Part of her wanted to run, to assume there was a catch. But another part, the part that didn't jump, told her to stay. She lifted her chin. "I'm ready." Elias smiled, small and real. "Good. Let's get started." That night, as Maya watched Noah sleeping peacefully beside her, a strange calm settled in her chest. She thought of Elias, his words, his stillness, the complete lack of judgment in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. Maya had barely begun to breathe again. 2 weeks into her new role as Elias's personal assistant, her life had shifted. Her days were more structured. Her salary could finally cover rent and daycare, and she didn't fall asleep worrying about whether she'd have enough formula for Noah. For the first time in years, hope lived in her home, however cautiously. She was careful not to blur professional lines with Elias. Though he treated her with a gentle respect and subtle protectiveness, she reminded herself daily, "He's your boss." Nothing more. Still, she couldn't deny that something was beginning to shift. He asked about Noah's fevers. He left her favorite coffee at her desk some mornings. Once, after a long meeting, she had laughed at something he said. Really laughed, and he had stared at her for a moment too long. It frightened her more than it thrilled her. But all of that, her steady rhythm, her delicate peace, shattered the moment she saw Jordan standing outside her apartment building. Leaning casually against the rusted railing of the steps, Jordan Maddox looked like the same man who'd swept her off her feet 5 years ago. Charm, lazy smile, and eyes that once felt like warmth. But now, all she saw was the cold betrayal behind them. Her heart didn't race. It hardened. "Hey, Maya," he said with mock sheepishness, pushing off the railing. "You look different." "I grew up," she replied coolly. "Why are you here?" Jordan shoved his hands into his coat pockets and shrugged. "I heard you're doing well now. Job at a big company. Thought maybe we could talk." Maya's mouth tightened. "You heard? From who?" "Old friend saw your name on LinkedIn or something. Said you were working at Coleman." "I figured." He looked past her toward the window. "Maybe it's time I came back." "Came back?" As if he had just stepped out for a coffee. Maya crossed her arms tightly over her chest. "You don't get to come back. You left me. 6 months pregnant. No money. No explanation. Just a note." He looked away. "I panicked. I wasn't ready to be a dad. I messed up, okay?" "No," she snapped. "Messing up is forgetting to bring milk. You abandoned us. You stole my savings. You left me homeless." He had the audacity to look pained. "I thought you'd be better off without me." "Don't romanticize your cowardice," she said sharply. "You didn't leave because you were protecting me. You left because it was easier than growing up." There was a beat of silence. The air between them turned cold. "I want to meet him," Jordan finally said. "My son." That hit her like a slap. But she didn't flinch. "You don't get to want anything. You had your chance. And you forfeited every right the day you walked away." Later that night, Maya couldn't sleep. Noah was curled beside her, tiny hands balled into fists, his breath soft and steady. She brushed a curl off his forehead and whispered, "You don't need him. You never did." Still, the encounter shook her. Not because she missed Jordan, but because for a moment, she had feared he could just walk back in and ruin everything again. The next morning, she arrived at work early, still carrying the storm in her chest. Elias noticed. As they prepared for a shareholder call, he paused, watching her fumble with notes. "You're distracted." She sighed. "I'm sorry. I didn't sleep much." A silence passed. I saw someone yesterday, she added quietly. Someone from before. Elias didn't ask for details. He just waited. My ex, she finally said. Noah's father. That made him set the tablet down. What did he want? To come back. Elias's jaw twitched slightly. And I told him no, she said simply. I'm not who I was. And I'm not letting him near my son. Elias nodded slowly, his voice softer now. Good. You shouldn't have to clean up someone else's cowardice. Maya blinked at him, surprised by his word choice. There was something in his voice, a shadow of experience. Something unspoken. They didn't talk more about it. But the room felt warmer after that. That evening, Jordan sent her one last message. You've changed. You've become cold. Maya didn't reply. But in her mind, she whispered the truth. No. I became a mother. I became strong. I became someone you can't manipulate anymore. By the end of the week, she'd blocked his number and deleted his messages. The door to her past had closed. And when she looked at Elias now, really looked, she didn't feel broken anymore. Just healing. Maya never expected her past to arrive in a black chauffeured Bentley, parked just outside Coleman Industries. But there it was, sleek, dark, and uncomfortably familiar, blocking the curb like it owned the pavement. Just like its owner always had. She spotted the man standing beside it before anyone else did. Richard Caldwell. Her father. Tall and intimidating in his tailored overcoat, surrounded by two quiet assistants and a driver who seemed to know better than to speak. His presence drew looks from the building staff, but he ignored them. His eyes were locked on the lobby doors, waiting. Maya stood behind the glass, heart pounding. She didn't move. Couldn't. Her limbs had turned to lead. She was frozen in the same silence she'd stood in years ago when he shut the gates of his mansion in her face. He hadn't come for her. He was here to see Elias. The meeting was unannounced, but security couldn't turn Richard Caldwell away. Within minutes, he was sitting in Elias Coleman's office, stone-faced, perfectly composed, and staring down the man who had been quietly changing his daughter's life. Elias didn't offer him coffee. Only a steady, level gaze. To what do I owe the pleasure, Mr. Caldwell? Elias asked, his tone dry but not disrespectful. Richard didn't waste time. I've been hearing things. About my daughter. About you and my daughter. Elias sat back. Go on. I know what she's told you. She has a talent for drama. Always did. But I don't need to remind you what kind of reputation this could create, for her and for you. Elias's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. Are you here to threaten me? Or to take responsibility for abandoning your daughter when she needed you most? Richard's eyes narrowed. She walked away from a fortune, from a life I built for her. She walked away because she wanted to live her life, Elias countered. She fell. She struggled. And she got back up without you. The silence that followed was icy. Elias leaned forward, voice lower now. Let me be very clear. Maya has earned every inch of ground she's standing on. She didn't get here through pity or connections. She's the most capable, determined person I've ever worked with. And she's a damn good mother. Richard's expression shifted ever so slightly. You care for her. It wasn't a question. I respect her, Elias replied. Deeply. Richard studied him for a moment, then stood, straightening his coat. I didn't come to start a fight, he said stiffly. I came to offer a step forward. Elias stood as well. She'll decide if she wants to take it. Later that afternoon, Elias found Maya in the staff lounge, staring blankly at a cold cup of tea. She didn't look up when he entered. She already knew. You met with him, she said flatly. I did. She finally turned to him. Why did he come? He said he wants to talk. To reconnect. Apologize. Maya gave a short, hollow laugh. Of course he does, now that I work in a building he respects. Elias crouched beside her chair, lowering his voice. I told him the decision's yours. I won't tell you what to do. But he looked shaken, Maya, like a man who's starting to realize what he lost. She bit her lip, blinking back tears. I waited for him. For so long. Every milestone Noah reached, Every night I cried myself to sleep. I hoped he'd come. But he didn't. You're not that woman anymore, Elias said gently. You don't need his validation. Only closure, if you want it. 3 days later, Maya met her father in a quiet park. Not in a mansion, not in a boardroom, but in the place where she once took Noah as a baby, pushing him on squeaky swings in the early hours before work. Richard stood when he saw her, awkward in the open space. You look like your mother, he said softly. I get that a lot, she replied. They sat. I won't pretend I was right, he began. But when you left, it felt like you were throwing everything away. Not just the money. Me. You disowned me, she said, voice steady. I came back with nothing. You looked through me like I was a stranger. He exhaled. I was angry. Hurt. But I see now, you were braver than I gave you credit for. She didn't say anything. Just let him speak. I'd like to meet Noah. If you'll let me. Maya stared at him, eyes unreadable. I'm not promising anything, she said finally. But I'll think about it. He nodded, man learning humility far too late. That evening, she told Elias everything. And when she finished, he simply reached for her hand. You handled it perfectly. Maya looked at their intertwined fingers, her heart oddly still. Thank you. For standing up for me. For seeing me. Elias smiled. I always did. The rooftop didn't look the same anymore. It was still high. Still cold. Still kissed by the wind. But it wasn't haunted now. It was peaceful. Maya stood near the ledge, not at the edge, but a few safe steps back, holding her son's hand as he giggled at the way the breeze caught his chin. Noah was 3 now, tall for his age, with big eyes full of questions and tiny sneakers that never seemed to stay tied. Elias was a few feet away, setting up a picnic blanket near the HVAC unit. Not the most romantic spot, perhaps, but it was private. Quiet. The place where their story had begun. Only this time there was no storm. No tears. No pain. Only sunlight breaking through the late afternoon haze. 1 year later. So much had changed. Maya had been promoted to Director of Internal Operations, a position Elias insisted she earned entirely on merit, though the board had raised eyebrows at first. She'd proven them wrong within weeks. She now worked fewer hours, Elias's idea, so she could spend more time with Noah. She had even started taking online business courses in the evenings, something she once thought was a luxury only other people could afford. Her father, Richard, had met Noah twice. Their relationship was tentative, polite but distant. She had drawn firm boundaries, and to her surprise, he respected them. Sometimes healing meant distance, not reunion. As for Jordan, he never reached out again. I brought crackers, Noah announced, proudly holding up a tiny Tupperware. For the picnic. You're a legend, Elias said seriously, giving him a high five. Maya laughed, shaking her head. You two are going to eat all the snacks before we sit down. They settled together on the blanket. For a while, they just enjoyed the view, the city stretching out endlessly, alive and beautiful in a way Maya never noticed before. It was the same skyline she had once wanted to disappear into. Now it felt like a backdrop for possibility. Then Elias turned to her, pulling something from his coat pocket. A small velvet box. Maya's heart skipped. He opened it, but not immediately. First, he looked her in the eyes with the steady calm that had once pulled her back from the edge of death. You already know I love you, he said, voice low, steady. But what you may not know is that you saved me too. I was living for legacy. Numbers. Reputation. But the day I met you, really met you, was the first day I started living for something real. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate ring. Simple. Elegant. Timeless. Like her. Noah leaned in close, whispering, Is that for Mommy? Elias smiled. It is. Then he looked up at her again. Maya, will you marry me? Not just for you, not just for Noah, for all of us. For the life we've built. The one we chose. Maya's throat tightened. But this time, her tears came from a different place. Not grief. Not fear. Gratitude. Joy. Wholeness. She nodded, then whispered the words she hadn't believed she'd say again. Yes. I will. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting golden light across the rooftop, they sat together, mother, son, and man who had once been a stranger, now becoming family. Where pain had once reigned, peace now lived. And where she had once almost ended her story, she had instead begun a new one. A better one. A life worth staying for. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.